Oh, yeah, that's what I thought. Everybody stand up. Just for a minute, stand up.
That's a good call.
You know how this works. A little to the right, a little to the left. Like, I don't know, like this thing is about learning, right? But we forget what we know about adults and sitting around for 2 hours straight and everybody good? All right, check it out. All right, so before I sit down, one protest statement. Is Mike Moe in the room? Because I understand the idea for this Beltway boys thing was his idea. These guys were too nice to protest. I was going to walk out on the thing. Anyway.
There's only one actual Beltway boy here. These other people have left.
True that. So it's really an honor for me to be up here today. We have a lot of things that we talk about at this conference and summit that are important. But I'm always reminded how important people are, leaders in particular. And so for me, being able to share the stage with two people who make my top human beings list is really important to me. And I hope to have them share a little bit of why I think that's true and why we're fortunate to have them in this work and to have had them in this work for so long. So with that, I mean, Don Graham and Arne Duncan need no introduction. What I do want to do is start this conversation. We'll take it in a few parts with what you're doing now, who you're focused on, and why. And Don, I want to start with you because you've picked up the pace on your work over the last few years, very specifically. But why don't you tell people what you're doing?
Thank you, Jim. Well, I'm honored to be here. There is a question period at the end, and I know there's one question that's centrally on all of your minds. Arne and I both know this. And that question is, Jim, how about a grant for a particularly worthy nonprofit organization that I am associated with? So we'll give you time for questions. I talked at this meeting 3 years ago as somebody starting a nonprofit, somebody starting a national scholarship fund for undocumented immigrants. I have now drunk the Kool-Aid and want to give you a 3-year report. When I went away to college in 1962, God help me, I was blithely unaware that in a quarter of the United States, African American students were barred from most of the state universities by law. A lot of us are still not aware that there are hundreds of thousands of graduates of American high schools barred by law from some or all of their state universities. These are the dreamers, the children of undocumented immigrants. You say you came as a 6-year-old with your parents. You say you're the valedictorian. You say you're the president of the class. Too bad. We give them no aid, and in many cases, there's 15 or 16 states that either ban them from their colleges or charge them out-of-state tuition or even international tuition, 3 times in-state tuition, which makes college unaffordable. I want to tell you about 3 years' work on a scholarship program called the Dream.US, of which I have the honor to be co-founder. But I don't want to tell you about us. I want to tell you about these students. I know less than 1% of what these two men know about college access and affordability for low-income students. I'm one of these old-fashioned people who believes that for low-income high school graduates, college is crucial. And we're coming up with all kinds of alternatives now. But I've spent a lot of years on a scholarship program for DC residents, almost all of whom are citizens. The dreamers defy all of the beliefs of those of you who are involved in education of low-income kids. They break all the stereotypes. We have 1,600 students enrolled in college right now. We are a 3-year-old program, so I can't really talk to you about graduation rates. But I can talk to you about persistence rates, and you'll think I'm joking. Our first to second year persistence rates for 3 separate classes of Dreamer students, the first enrolled in the fall of 2014, the persistence rates, the lowest is 93%. Of all the Dreamers we ever enrolled, 85% are still enrolled or have already attained an associate's degree. And their college GPA averages 3.2, although all of them are working. Now, the Dreamers are as homogeneously low-income a group of students as you could find, and we select for, among other things, for lack of means. We don't try to find the most elite, the most promising students in the country. What we've done is to raise a pot of money and come up with $25,000 scholarships, not $25,000 a year, $25,000 total over 4 years for colleges like Miami-Dade, CUNY, the Cal States, where they do get some state aid, low-cost schools around the country where the $25,000 covers most of the cost of tuition, and we give a tiny stipend for fees and books. So let me tell you about one or two stories. Our partner in Washington, D.C. is Trinity Washington University, whose president is the magnificent Patricia McGuire. She has welcomed almost 40 Dreamers there over 3 years. One has dropped out. These young women have an average graduation rate, have an average GPA of 3.4. Pat, when they arrived, greeted them and said, organize a club, and in 3 months I'm going to have the club address the Board of Trustees. The Board of Trustees, according to the member who works for me, were crying at the end of the presentation at what these students had gone through. One of them is a 29-year-old woman from Georgia named Sadhana Singh, graduated with top scores. Georgia does not admit Dreamers to the top state U's and charges them in-state tuition at the rest. 10 years after graduating, at 29, Sadhana heard Gabby Pacheco on the radio, or a coworker heard Gabby talking about the Dream.us and said to Sadhana, this sounds like what you've been looking for. Sadhana went looking for a college in Georgia. We obviously don't have one. So she found Trinity. She applied, she won the scholarship, she was accepted, she did a GoFundMe for her room and board, she got it. She has a 3.9 after 3 years, enrolling as a 29-year-old freshman, and we had quite a few of those. Once you get these Dreamers into college, you do not get them out. The motivation level is exemplified by our program director, Gabby Pacheco, who's a rather famous Dreamer. She was admitted to Miami-Dade back before there was any scholarship or any in-state. She was admitted, Dr. Padron told me, on her 27th visit to the admissions office. On graduating, she and 3 classmates walked from Miami to Washington, stopping at every small town newspaper. There was no DACA at this time. They all could have been deported. To tell editors, to tell TV stations about the educational plight of Dreamers. They made it to Washington, knocked on the door of the White House, couldn't come in, they were undocumented. But some of Arne and Jim's colleagues met them in church basements and wound up working with Gabby, a driving force, wound up working with these 2 gentlemen and others to create DACA, the program that enables them now to go to college and to work. And I have to say, President Trump has not rescinded DACA and has said generous words about the Dreamers repeatedly. Critics of immigration, and I welcome questions here from Trump supporters. I know there are some in the audience. Critics of immigration say they don't want to see these kids getting breaks that US citizens don't get. Believe me, these students get no breaks at all. If they win the full $25,000 scholarship for us, they will still get less aid by far. These 2 guys can tell you than any classmate, any high school classmate. They are not getting a break, nor are they displacing as college students from our partner colleges. Miami-Dade will take everyone who applies, so will CUNY, which is our biggest partner, and God bless those people. Those universities, the universities that charge $6,000 or $7,000 a year, you're so lucky if you have one. I'm not an immigration expert. I don't have an immigration plan for the United States. I don't know what we ought to do. I know these students deserve a chance to go to college, and if they get it, they will do amazing things for this country. If you'd like to help, go to the dream.us. There's a big, bright red green button that says give, and I need help. We need, for 25 grand, I can actually promise you that we'll graduate a college student, because if somebody drops out, we have community college graduates who will replace them. And I would welcome not only monetary help, but participation. I need people to help connect with others to make this program go on for a few more years, because our initial idea that it was a 4-year program and then Congress would pass the DREAM Act doesn't look like it's going to happen in 4 years, so we got to stick around a little longer. End of report. Thank you, Jim.
Sure, Don. I mean, what Don said about the Dreamers is critically important, but I think it's really interesting. One of the things that ties together Don and Arne for me is, though both of them have the ability to think at the systemic level, they never actually lose sight of the fact that there are individual faces and lives tied to every single action that they take, and get deeply engaged in the very specifics of those individual lives. So I appreciate that about you, Don, and I think it brings me to the work, Arne, that you're doing now, having left the Secretary of Education role and gone back to Chicago. You've decided to take a very deep focus at home. So why don't you share what you're doing?
I will in one sec, just take 1 minute. I'm just a huge fan of what Don is doing. I think obviously so many of us come to education because we want to create opportunity for those who've been denied opportunity, been locked out. And the fact as a country that we don't allow all students, including dreamers, a chance to go to college is crazy to me. We're cutting off our nose to spite our face. So the leadership he's providing to create real opportunity is a big deal. And if you can support him, that'd be fantastic. One quick plug for my buddy Jim. We've been friends for a long time, and you may not know, I tried to recruit him to work with me in Chicago, and I failed. So I joked that I had to move to DC to have the chance to work with him and work in his backyard. But he made me and our team smarter and better. I've had lots of great partners over the years, lots of different places, but I've never had a better teammate. So please just give a quick round of applause to these students. Just quickly, family and I have been home about 18 months, and it's pretty interesting. On one hand, it's great to be home. It's great to be out of DC right now, quite frankly, for a whole host of reasons. Great to be around friends that we've had for, people I grew up with, 30, 35, 40-year relationships. So that part's been fantastic. It's been great for my kids, great for my wife to be home. The flip side is it's a really, really tough time in Chicago. And the issue of violence is not a new one for me. Growing up as a part of my mother's inner city after school program, when I started to be 13, 14, 15, I started to lose friends that I played basketball with on the streets to gun violence. I ran the Chicago public schools for 7 years, lots of issues, academic achievement, obviously, tough budget issues, labor management, negotiations. All of that was easy compared to dealing with the issue of gun violence. During those 7.5 years, we lost on average 1 child every 2 weeks was killed. And the vast majority were not gangbangers. It was not, 2 in the morning. This was Starkeisha Reed, who was in her living room on 7:30 on a school morning, who was shot through the window by an AK-47 from 100 yards away. It was Blair Holt, who was riding the CTA bus home after school, and a gunman came on the bus and shooting some other people, and he jumped in front of 2 girls and was killed. And very, very naively, in hindsight, when we left to go to DC, I just thought it couldn't get worse. I thought we had hit rock bottom. And the truth is, for a whole host of reasons, things got a lot worse. So just in terms of numbers, last year in Chicago, we had 762 people killed. We had about 3,600 shot. Way more than New York and LA combined. And when you think about the numbers, that makes no sense whatsoever. Third largest city way more murders, way more shootings than the two largest cities combined. And so coming home, and so many people helped me growing up, and it helped me have all these amazing academic and athletic and social experiences. If I just wanted to help out, for me, this seemed to be the crisis facing the city. And it's interesting, it's a concentrated crisis. It's basically 15 neighborhoods are producing 75% of the violence. So if you go to downtown Chicago, it's gorgeous, it's booming. You go to Lincoln Park on the north side, or Hyde Park, where I live by University of Chicago, it's gorgeous. But you go 2 or 3 miles south and west, it's just an entirely different world. The vast majority of those shooting and being shot are young black men, 17 to 24, 25, 26. Are the 15 most violent neighborhoods, 14 are African American, 1 is Latino. So what we're working on, and Lorene Powell Jobs has been an amazing partner in supporting our work. All my life I've worked on the prevention side. Education, I think, is prevention. But the sort of epiphany I had coming home is that if you wanted to stop shooting, you actually had to work with the people who were doing the shooting. And the profile of those shooting and being shot are the same. It's exactly the same person. And so what we're doing is just starting to hire the guys who are in that life. And in every crisis, there's an opportunity. 2 pieces of the huge opportunity is it is so violent right now, it is so scary, it is so tough. Many guys are looking to get out of that life. And secondly, there's a myth that everyone's getting rich selling drugs on the street. And I've tested this dozens and dozens of times. I always say, we want to hire you. Here's the grand bargain. We'll give you a job, but you got to stop shooting. And what's the price point? And it's always, always, always $12, $13 an hour. It's peanuts. And so we're paying $15 an hour, which may be a little bit high. We might scale it down as we do other cohorts. But there is a waiting list of guys looking to get off the street and come work with us. And we're doing lots of different things, lots of work around trauma care and support. These guys have lived with trauma all their life, lots of social emotional support. For guys who have lived pretty tough, hard lives, many are basically homeless or close to homeless. One of our guys was living on a porch, one of his guys was living out of his car. We're doing lots of work in the community, neighborhood beautification, home deconstruction. Our goal is to hire guys for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, stabilize their lives, spin them off into the legal economy. We have a couple dozen employers that are committed to hiring. We're actually starting to do that. Last thing I'll say is that, again, we all talk about scale and numbers. In Chicago, for all the toughness, the numbers don't overwhelm me. The work is really, really hard, and every day is precarious and frankly a little scary some days, but the numbers aren't overwhelming. If we could hire about 2,000 guys, that would take down violence significantly. And not every guy will do this. Some guys might just like to shoot, some guys might like to kill, and then the police have to do their job. We're just trying to shrink what the police have to do. And I'm convinced that 75, 80% of people out there want to change. Change is hard, it's a process, it's not overnight. But if we could get to them, we could shrink what the police have to do and stop robbing kids of their childhoods, which is what happens now. We have a bunch of kids who can't go outside anymore. They literally can't go outside. And I grew up all my childhood playing basketball everywhere, all over the city. And the fact that we are basically imprisoning kids now, they're living with a level of fear and trauma that most folks in this room can't begin to understand. It's not fair. And so that's what we're trying to change.
I have a question. I have a question, Jim, for Arne.
He's supposed to be asking the questions.
Yeah, but
It's all good. Don's always got a better question than I have.
So, first of all, in common with everyone in this room, I think this is incredible. I really have been in Washington since shortly after the administration of George Washington. It's a place. And I can think of a few analogies, not many, of people who have led this country, worked very hard in leading the Department of Education, and then want to go back and take on something this tough and be of direct service. I'm an ex-cop. I had a year and a half on the DC Police Department at another time of great violence, and I saw that epidemic wane, and it took the direct involvement of some brave people. There's a big Chicago contingent in this room, Arne. How can the people who care about your city pitch in and help you?
I appreciate the plug or the asset. So these are a couple things. These are men. These aren't boys. These aren't kids. So again, 17 to 24, 25, 26. But this may sound silly to people here, but these are really good guys. Most of these guys are really good guys. And They've had extraordinarily tough lives. They've been through a lot. Some have done a lot. But they need everything that we all need. We provide life coaches. We commit to a year of life coaching. We'll probably extend that. Many have not had, well, none have had fathers really engaged in their lives forever. They need a sense of family. We've really tried to build a brotherhood and a camaraderie and have guys supporting each other who were historically rivals on the street. So they need everything that all of us in this room need. They need opportunity. They need relationships. They need mentoring. Many of our guys want to be entrepreneurs. We need help creating business plans, and we can create some seed investments for them. But everything that we all want for our own kids is not too dissimilar to what our guys want. They happen to be a little older. They happen to have some other challenges. But these are guys who are working unbelievably hard, not just to build better lives for themselves, but to actually lead the community where it needs to go.
So what you need of Chicagoans is to contact you and maybe get in touch with one of these young men.
Yeah, work it through me, and my email is Arne@emersoncollective.com. But we need mentors, we need academic tutors, we need life coaches, and we need people to think about actually hiring at the back end as guys transition from this life to the next one.
Right.
Okay. Glad you asked. Arne, you laid out a logic, but I just want to focus on the issue for a second. You could have done a lot of different things. Why did you decide to go back and focus on this issue?
It's a good question. I'm not quite sure why. I think, like you, we both went through it. When you're doing the work in DC, you don't have the emotional capability to think about what's next. Like, you're just so all consumed with what you're doing, and ethically you can't even do it. So something just drew me back to Chicago. So that was that eliminated the rest of the country, and wanted to go home again for my kids, for my wife, for my mom was there. My mom's health isn't great, and so a lot of things are just pulling me back there. So that was sort of all I knew. But then going back, and again, I was obviously gone for 7 years, but I was going back periodically and talking to guys, and I was starting to visit Cook County Jail a little bit. I go there once a month now, and just feeling this thing was out of control, and feeling like there wasn't a clear strategy, or there wasn't something happening to sort of stem this tide. And again, my strong hypothesis, and I may be wrong, or people might disagree, is that we can't arrest our way out of this. Mass incarceration hasn't worked. It's had a devastating impact, particularly in the African American, Latino communities, that have entire sets of men just disappear. One anecdote, one of our guys talked about, he's crazy. I have a million crazy stories, but he actually met his father and his grandfather for the first time in jail. Just like stuff you can't imagine. They were trying to check the names. There are all these names that were similar, and that's where he found his father and grandfather. And I just think these guys want a chance. And a lot of them at 12 or 13 became the men of their homes. Dad was locked up or gone, mom was on crack or an alcoholic, and they had to start making some money. And there was one place to go to make some money because they had to eat. And that was the guy in the street corner. And all of us in rooms like this, we were absent from their lives. We weren't present, and the guy in the corner was present. And they made a rational choice because there were no other choices. And so I'm doing this because I think all we need to do is present a second rational choice. And many, not all, but many would happily take the second rational choice.
I want to move us to the next part of the conversation, but I think I was sitting backstage listening, and I think that if you tie together the arc of the conversation from the assertion that we actually, if we are rational, recognize that anyone can learn anything. If you don't recognize this as the perfect manifestation of that belief set, you're missing something. Like, if you believe that, then you can understand perfectly what Arne just said. And if you have a hard time understanding what Arne just said, then you can't say you actually believe that. I'll just assert that. Let me jump quickly to another part of the conversation. I don't have a clock, so you guys are in trouble. Don, everybody in the room is kind of wondering, Michael Crow brought it up this morning. Yeah. You guys did this really, what some people would say is unbelievable deal of deciding to sell off a really important part of Kaplan to Purdue University. So I'm going to have to ask you to keep it tight, but talk about why and what you believe can be accomplished from this new kind of relationship.
Well, we have spent 15 years building up Kaplan University to something we loved, cared for, and believed in. And I believe in it more than superficially. I've taught there for 7 years. I'm teaching a class online right now at the MBA program. But Andy Rosen, who's out there in the audience somewhere, and Greg Marino built this up from when it had a couple of hundred students when Andy took it over. When we first started talking to Mitch Daniels, when Andy first started talking to Mitch Daniels, our eyes lit up because we weren't burning to sell Kaplan University, but the opportunity created for Purdue and for our students, and for students like our students, was phenomenal. We have wanted to serve students who weren't served the first time around by the education system. I think most people know this. I'll use the words, we're a for-profit university, and our average student is 34 years old. So these are the students who did not follow the track Arne and other superintendents tried to push them along. High school, then college, then job. A lot of them tried, some of them didn't try. But life found them at 30 in a situation they didn't like, so they wanted to go back to college. And as Michael Crow said this morning, this is a large population of people who want an education. Purdue is the star of this story. Purdue, Mitch, realizing that they had no online undergraduate students, wanted to start such a program, investigated starting it with his own resources, believed it would take too long and that they were too late. The partnership with us brings them 32,000 students, and we are prepared to be their back office. We are selling them Kaplan University. Those students become Purdue students. They will be educated by a faculty reporting to a board, a Purdue faculty eventually reporting to a board that is all but one member Purdue, all but one member Purdue trustees, and one member of the Kaplan Board of Trustees. So, Purdue can offer any degree for which it's accredited at any level in any program, far more than we can offer. So I am so excited by the opportunity for Purdue. I have to say 2 words about my colleagues at Kaplan. This group, in the face of widespread disbelief, the former Secretary of Education is one person whom you could characterize as on the whole a critic of for-profit colleges, but who always said some of these institutions do well and serve students well. Here's the 2 little pieces of evidence about us. At our lowest moment, when we were heavily criticized, and when in fact one recruiter at one of our campuses had performed badly, Greg Marino, the head of Kaplan Higher Education, and Andy came up with a program called the Kaplan Commitment. You enroll at Kaplan University, you stay 5 weeks, you take your first set of tests. If after that time you say, I want to withdraw, I can't do the work, it doesn't fit my life, or the recruiter misled me, you owe nothing, no tuition, and you incur no debt. That program cost our company, the last time we reported on it publicly, $175 million. We were proud to forego it. We wanted to make clear that this was an institution that was there to serve students and did so. Ironically, at the very end of the for-profit debate in 2015, for the first time, we came up with government data about the earnings of our students from a multi-state database that gives any university the chance to learn about how much their students are now earning by program. It turned out that the average person with a Kaplan bachelor's degree 5 years later was making 80% more than they were earning at the time of enrollment. Remember that our students are 34. We're not talking about 80% more than an 18-year-old. And that dwarfed the amount of the debt payment. So I think Kaplan came through for its students. And I honestly think the deal that Mitch Daniels and Andy arranged gives another institution, Purdue, the opportunity to come through for many more students. Mitch is duly wary about how hard it'll be. Michael Crow used the phrase, National Land Grant Mission. That's a hell of a phrase. And we couldn't do that, but Purdue can. So thanks for the question.
Sure. So this is an opportunity for Purdue to enter the kind of landscape that Michael Crow described. I believe that that is going to be one of the ways in which higher education is going to wind up being transformed. You've got that kind of model. You've got the 2U model, which is helping other universities take the step. You've got other universities like Southern New Hampshire. Paul LeBlanc was here. So I think the landscape is changing pretty dramatically right before our eyes and increasing access. Arne, I would keep going down this path, but I want to actually just ask you the question, now that you've had it, more than a year to kind of step back, about the time as you were a secretary, about the things that you are happiest you were able to get done, and the things you are most concerned about being undone in the coming periods.
We'll answer that. I'm actually, in terms of what's going on now, I am much more worried about war and threats to our democracy than sort of education policy. I would love to just focus on the challenges of education policy, but I think the challenges to our country, in my personal belief, are much larger than that. Was thrilled that we were able to significantly increase access to high quality early childhood education. I think that's the best investment we can make. I think so much of the work you led around just putting resources and money behind evidence-based, take all politics and ideology out of it. If people are getting good results, let's put more resources behind that, and the work you did around I3, that was, it sounds probably common sense in rooms like this. It was pretty revolutionary for government to do that, and that was a huge step in the right direction. So proud that we got high school graduation rates to all-time highs. Proud that we were able to get $40 billion in additional money for Pell Grants. Went from about 6 million Pell recipients to 9 million Pell recipients without asking taxpayers for a nickel. But let me be clear, in all those things where we made progress, none of these are mission accomplished moments. These are all unfinished. And in terms of access to high quality early childhood education, we still are like 27th, 28th, 29th internationally. Like, we should be ashamed. High school graduation rates at close to 84%, but our dropout rate is still way, way, way too high. And obviously, if you drop out today, you have no opportunities out there. In terms of college, the goal is not college going, the goal is college completion. We're 12th in the world. So if you look at any of those levels, early childhood, K-12, higher ed, we're nowhere near as a nation where we need to be. If we want to compete for high-wage, high-skilled jobs, we want to have the best educated workforce in the world. And we're not close there. Yeah. So proud of the progress, but long, long way to go. I think what troubles me most with the current administration isn't so much what they will undo or not undo, and they'll try and undo what they can, is I just don't candidly see any vision. I don't see any goal. Like, for me, the goal should be to lead the world in access to high quality early childhood education. The goal should be to take high school graduation rates from 84% to 90%. The goal should be to try and lead the world in college completion. I don't think any of those goals are Democratic or Republican or left or right. These are like nation building goals. And I haven't heard one thing, not one, coming from the administration about goals. Now, we can have lots of honest, vigorous debate about strategies to achieve goals, and no one has a monopoly on good ideas. We didn't have a monopoly, they don't have a monopoly, no one has a monopoly on this stuff. But I have not heard any articulation of what are goals to create opportunity for kids and communities who aren't served, to make our nation the best educated nation in the world. And that is what most concerns me. What I see is small ball.
So I'll just leave that there.
Well, I would add,
go ahead,
just to your question to Arne, as a citizen of Washington, D.C., this group is honoring Kaya Henderson tonight. She and Michelle Rhee before her would never have been able to do their work without the support of these two people. Thank you for Race to the Top, and thank you for backing quality education in K-12 systems.
Yeah, the only thing that would have been a bigger privilege for me than this panel is actually having Kaya up here too. So I want to thank you for that. All right, so that says I got to get to my last question, I think. You guys were supposed to get the questions. I apologize. The last question I actually want to ask you guys is, because I actually have the benefit of knowing you as both your leaders, as people, but also having had a view into you as dads. And it's something I really have admired and frankly that I lean upon. So the last question I just want to ask you, given where you are, is one piece of thought about what is most important to you as a father. Like when you think about every day as you try to raise your kids, Don, and as you try and continue to raise your kids, Arne. And then one thing you wish you knew more about, and maybe you wish you'd done differently. Go ahead.
Oof. You go first. Well, all right.
I got to stall here and think, so you go first.
Jim works for someone who is 3 years younger than my youngest child. So when I talk about my children, I have to reach back into memories. I loved my kids. I was lucky enough to grow them up when, I don't know, we had a lot of time together. I enjoyed every minute with them, and that mattered more than anything else. I think I did make a mistake, and luckily was able to correct it. With my two oldest kids, at one point in each of their lives, they wanted to explore going to a school that I didn't think would fit them particularly well. And I initially told them that I didn't think it was a great idea and suggested we go explore it a little more. In both cases, my daughter wound up saying, "This is the school for me." And I learned about the power of that phrase, and not just for my kids. They knew what they wanted a hell of a lot better than I did. And that informed me about some other choices I saw some other students make later on.
So this one's obviously personal for all of us, and again, I'll speak for myself, we all do this stuff very, very imperfectly every single day. So what I try and do, two things, is one is just expose my kids to everything. And so I take them with me to tough neighborhoods. I take them to situations that probably, rationally aren't the best places to be or aren't the safest or whatever. But I want them to be comfortable and confident in lots of different situations and around lots of different people and think nothing of it because we're all people. And seeing them in those situations and being comfortable, that means a lot to me. And that was an amazing gift my mother gave to my sister and brother and I. And I think, again, we often want to protect or overprotect. And maybe I'm overcompensating the other side, but I'm trying to do the opposite of that. The one that I think I'm not doing enough on or trying to is just really giving my kids chance and permission to fail, like to try really hard stuff. And sort of a corny thing I try and ask at night sometimes, like, what did you fail at today? What did you struggle with? And I think it's giving kids a lot more room, and we want that. That if they're not failing, then they're not really stretching themselves, they're not trying to do hard enough stuff. I want to continue to try and create more space for them to struggle, to not be successful. Because I think ultimately that's how we all grow the most and learn the most.
Awesome. I have no idea if this was good for you, but it was fantastic for me. Thanks to you both for this, for your leadership, and for your friendship. Everybody have a great one.
Thanks, guys.